indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we have quorum. That's good. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any changes or questions? We're all good. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes? Andy seconds. They are approved. Great. Okay, reports. Tammy, you're up.
Thank you. First of all, I want to take an opportunity to introduce our new board member, Clark Pyatt. Thank you so much to Clark for joining the board. I know he comes to us with a rich background with the Scouts in Radnor Township and a variety of other community aspects. We know he's got a lot of great time and energy he's put out there in many of the parks and all the trails and the areas, and it's going to bring a whole lot of knowledge and wisdom, I think, to the board. So I'm really excited. I've had an opportunity to work with Clark for many years relative to the Scouts with various Eagle Scout projects, the Great American Backyard Campout, the bike rodeo, and all kinds of great things that have gone on. So I'm really excited to have him on the board. I just want to acknowledge that tonight. So thanks and welcome.
Welcome.
So I just want to give a report about a lot of the great things that are going on and have been going on, of course. We have a lot of great programming that's underway and getting underway, of course, with the busy spring that's always ahead of us. It's always a big turning point when folks are starting to get back outside. And then we're also looking closely towards summer where folks are looking to register for camps and things like that. We have a lot of registration openings for programs such as our preschool soccer, which is popular, always very popular. We usually have tons and tons of kids over the series of the year, which usually is in excess of about 300 over the course of a year. And that's run by Soccer Shots and World Cup Sports Academy, so there are two different options that are out there and available currently. We have our Champions basketball program that's up and running, which is an annual program, and this year we're actually doing that at the Agnes Irwin School. We also have Ultimate Frisbee open, Griffin Volleyball Clinic is open, Spring Break Soccer Camp. We have outdoor tennis and pickleball, which is outdoor and indoor. Lots of great options there that are taking place. We have a new trip to Washington, D.C., where we have registration open. Registration is currently low. We are evaluating it, so March 15th is actually our deadline for registration, so if anybody's interested in that, they'll have to act fast. We also have Radnor Day Camp registration open, as well as Summer Wizarding Camp registration open. Summer Wizarding Camp, actually, the 2 weeks that are offered in August are currently full, but we have added a week in July, and registration is going to be opening for that soon, so folks can look for that information within the next week or two, so that'll be out there. So if you are interested, please reach out to us because it does fill really fast. And we have wait lists from the August week, so we know there's already folks that'll be looking to get in there. We also have two new programs that are debuting that we've been working on. One is an outdoor sensory play group that takes place along the trails over in the Willows, of course, and it's an opportunity for really for everyone to join if they want. But we do have it, it's a little bit of a different type of a program that's being run by a licensed occupational therapist. So it does address a lot of it's considered the Contigo method in terms of a therapeutic approach towards nature, which has to do with connection and transformation in the great outdoors. And it's a method to address basically things like motor coordination, confidence, self-regulation, social skills, and things like that. So a great new program. We're hoping that is successful and looking forward to having that there at the Willows Park and along some of the trails and some of the nature-based areas. We also have a new Mojo fitness class that's coming up. It's actually going to be taking place at Climachrome Park in May, on Thursday, May 18th. It's a high-intensity interval training-based dance exercise group that gets together. And it's really designed for everyone. It's high energy, lots of great music, lots of fun moves, and it's an hour class to burn calories and have some fun in the outdoors. So we have some new things coming up. Those will be out there and available for folks to register. The Mojo Fitness program is actually for free, so folks can just come and join in on that. But we do ask for pre-registration so we can get an idea of how many are going to be there. By way of events, we also have a pickleball tournament that's coming up for St. Patty's Day on March 17th. We do still have a few more openings for players, so folks would need to reach out on that, and that'll take place at Radnor Activity Center. We have the 3rd annual Teen Flashlight Egg Hunt that takes place along the Radnor Trail and hubs at the Wayne Arts Center, so that's filling fast as well. The Youth Trout Derby in its 26th year this year is sold out again. We are taking a wait list for all 3 sessions. We have the orienteering event that'll take place on April 22nd, so that still has a lot of registration openings. And then, of course, we have the Arbor Day tree planting coming up on April 28th. The time for that we're still working out in the details. We're looking to partner with Radnor Elementary and possibly have a daytime program with one of their classrooms or classes to join in on the tree planting efforts, but that's all still in the works. And then there'll be a lot of other Earth Day-based cleanups and activities going on. Of course, there's the Darby Creek cleanup that's going to take place on April 15th at Skunk Hollow Park, so there is a sign up for that and more details. I know the Shade Tree Committee is working on their spring planting. I know there's more details on that are getting underway. And then the WPP is going to have their annual health and wellness event on Sunday, April 23rd. So if anybody wants to look into that, they can go straight to their website. And of course, go to ours at radnor.com to learn more about all the things I just mentioned and a whole lot more. A lot of great things happening and a lot of great things that are on the horizon coming up for summer as well. We have 3 surveys currently in circulation that I just wanted to call attention to. One is a community programming survey that's been out for a few months now, so we've been getting lots of responses coming in on that. So I think we have about 150 responses that have come in, and that's going to be an opportunity for us to just see what folks might be looking for in the community in addition to the things that we're doing right now. It's always good just to hear from folks. Times of day they're looking for programming, types of programming, locations, things like that they're looking for, just to help us to take a look at what we're doing and maybe broaden in some ways in terms of what we're doing. We also have a survey underway for the Radnor Run. We are evaluating whether or not we will continue the Radnor Run as a 5-mile or potentially as a 5K, which, as you know, is a 3.2 miles. So we are going to take a look at that and possibly reorganize the run here in what would be its 46th year. So still planning to have this great event, but looking at the 5-mile a little bit more closely. We recognize that the 5-mile on the streets even in the early morning on Sundays can sometimes be a little bit of a concern, for folks trying to traverse the town and get around, as well as just overall trying to see, where registration trends and things like that are going in terms of running, and possibly, scale that back to a lesser, length in terms of course. We also have, of course, our Odoriceo survey that's out, which I know we'll get to a little bit later on the agenda. So in terms of programming, just a quick announcement to the Board of Commissioners actually authorized a new role for our department. So we have a new program coordinator role that is currently open, and we have been going through an internal process of filling that, and we have an interview that's probably going to be taking place here in another week or two with Natalie Chico, who is our current recreation assistant. So the game plan will be to fulfill that program coordinator role, where we know we've seen a lot of demand that has increased over the last several years, hence the approval for the new role. And the recreation assistant role will then just be vacant for another year in hopes that in 2024 we can fill that role again. So that'll be a major change. And then also the one other authorization was changing our department name back officially to Parks and Recreation, so that it coincides with our codes, our administrative code, and the definitions of the department, which were never changed when we changed it to Recreation and Community Programming back in, I think it was 2013 or so, I think, when we did migrate to that new name. So we're going back to Parks and Recreation, which I think is a really good thing, and definitely fitting for what defines us in terms of our responsibilities. So switching gears just really, really quickly, because I know we have a lot of items on the agenda relative to park projects. I just wanted to note some of the upcoming Eagle Scout projects, and I'm not doing this just because Clark's here. I just wanted to highlight these because they've come to fruition. We have a scout that is engaged on his Eagle Scout project to extend the boardwalk in Skunk Hollow, the one that sort of ends, and there's still lots of areas that get wet and could definitely use extending of that boardwalk. And that's going to begin in the spring, so if we do have users down there in and around the trails, they'll see that he will be working. We don't have a defined start date yet, but we know he's going to be getting started in probably within the next month or so. We also are working with the Scout right now to rebuild from scratch, of course, the kiosk at the parking lot that was damaged. We had a vehicle that ran into it, obliterated it. Fortunately, it was not salvageable, and it's going to be rebuilt and put in a new location, probably closer to the trailhead or somewhere in and around that area, so that, of course, can still be double-sided. But working through that process, and then also we have another Scout that is going to repair the block brick walkway behind the willows where the grotto is located. That will take you right into the Skunk Hollow Trail. And parallel to that project, we're also going to rebuild the landings in and around the grotto and the stairs that are currently crumbling. So we're going to tie that all into one project that our Public Works team is going to take on, as well as the Scout and rebuilding the walkway. So you can see it now. It's uncovered now, of course, because it's winter, and you can see things a lot better because you don't have the thicket that comes in. But it's going to be a really nice defined walkway that'll take you right over to the Willows. So Will Nord has been engaged in that project. He's the executive director over at the WPP at the Willows Mansion, and is also excited about it, and will be coordinating to make sure we don't have him doing work when we have major events and stuff that are going on. So that's a little bit of a snapshot, and I guess we'll get into some of the other park projects here in a minute, but that's in essence my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Sorry, didn't have my mic on. No questions, comments? Okay. New business, do we have any? Anybody? All right, let's go to good old business. Fenimore Woods Park Renovations Project, update. Tell us about it, Tammy.
Okay, so we had, I know we had some questions last meeting, and we were just I wanted to kind of recap, just for clarification, kind of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So I'll go back to September, and I'll just kind of start there when the Parks and Recreation Board passed a motion to redefine the project goals. And I'll just read those briefly. They consisted of 5 items, had to do with the preservation of the integrity of the park and its amenities, its current integrity of the park and the amenities with priority focus on not removing trees, renovation of the stable building in place as bathrooms and storage, renovation of the pavilion by fixing it in place and or replacing it, of course, where it's currently located, renovation or replacement of the playground in its current location, and then incorporating the ADA and the accessibilities to the amenities in the park. So what had happened from that point is those objectives were passed along to our 2 consultants that have been engaged in this project, one being Gannett Fleming, who we heard from in last July 2022, to talk about the potential renovation of the stable into bathrooms and storage, as well as Gilmore and Associates, who has been our engaged consultant on the greater comprehensive plan for the park and the renovations. So they are aware of those objectives. We've talked through those, and we've gone through various iterations of proposals with them just to get them right. And we have those in hand and have had those received. And are planning to go to the Board of Commissioners on March 27th, so the commissioners can evaluate those proposals for potential authorization because of the magnitude of what they entail and the detail and the contractual nature and the cost require the Board of Commissioners to authorize them, of course, before they could get started on either piece. So basically, those two consultants would, in essence, work hand in hand on their respective areas within Fenimore Woods, if in fact that was approved by the Board of Commissioners. So our goal as the administration is now to make sure the commissioners get a comprehensive look of what the project will entail and try and estimate what the costs of all the different improvements will be. So we're hoping on the 27th to put a comprehensive evaluation in front of them so they could see all of the different improvement amenities and pieces. So we're talking about the parking lots, the pavilion, the playground, all of the areas that I just mentioned. And of course, you know, we're looking at things like landscaping, increasing the tree plantings and canopy in addition to what's there, the accessibility, all of that, and giving them a long list of what the options are so they could see what those costs look like, and essentially potentially approve those, and then we would get started working through the contracts of those with those two consultants, and ultimately come back to this board when that process begins. So if they end up authorizing, you know, for us to go and start renovating the stable, you know, looking at the design to renovate the stable, as well as the comprehensive goals of the park, we'll start to look at those in more detail now with the Parks Board, and then go back to having some of those more strategic roundtable meetings where we start to put the element of those designs together. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse, because I certainly don't want to speak on behalf of the commissioners. But I do want to make sure that you guys are aware that that meeting is upcoming. That way you can either attend or tune in, however you wish to get involved in that. And once that's finalized and it is an agenda item, I'll make sure that that's shared with the board, as well as our long interest list that we have of individuals and groups out there in the community who have had interest all along in this project. So that's where we are, and the meeting that's anticipated is March 27th.
Okay.
So as of right now, that's what we have on target and we have on schedule that we're working towards. And then once we have direction and authorization in those various areas, we'll start to move forward on our, hopefully, you know, next stage of design for the park.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Tammy or comments or other?
I have a question. Tammy, have you been receiving from the consultants from, you know, sort of the last time we met with the Parks Board? Are things starting to shape up, come in? Do they keep you informed of that process?
Well, they have not been authorized to do any work other than to put to put proposals together. So those proposals have been refined and essentially together. So what'll happen is the final versions of those proposals will be in front of the board for their approval.
I guess my question is do you feel like that's ready to happen on the 27th?
I feel pretty confident, yes.
Okay, great, because then as we come also to support it, and then residents as well.
Exactly, yes.
Great.
Yes, that's what we're working towards. I don't want to say that there's, you know, I'm sure there's an outside chance that something could delay, or there could be some other, you know, interference there, but if so, then it would just move to the first meeting in April. But right now, we're working towards March 27th, where that will be presented.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Good. Fingers crossed. Anything else on that, folks? Okay. Odoricio Park improvements. Update on that, Tammy.
We continue to solicit feedback for Odoricio Park. Interested in continuing to hear what folks have to say about the improvements. I will say that to date, right now we have 143 respondents to the survey, so that's a lot of respondents. There's a lot of information there. So my goal will be to work with the board probably in May or June to digest that information and present that information, so you all will have a look at that. So that would be with the Parks and Recreation Board. And so it was a Google survey. It's still out there, so it's going to be open for a while here, at least another month or two for folks to complete. So we want to definitely continue to encourage that feedback, as well as any other feedback that they wish to give by submitting their email or, phone call, whatever. We're receptive to that through a variety of means. So our goal would be is to start digging into that data, taking a look at that data, and then have more of a formal meeting, perhaps again or I should say a specialized meeting, again over at the RTCA. I know we've had a few of those in the last year that have been successful. I wouldn't call them overly successful, but I think, once people know that there's, the surveys, data's out there, it's time to really start to have the design elements, start to put those together, and we'll be looking for the Parks Board to weigh in on what those might be. So very similar to Fenimore Woods, I would probably want to work with the Parks and Recreation Board to identify a list of objectives, and then that'll give us the opportunity to formally engage a consultant to put together a conceptual feasibility plan on what those elements might be for the park. So I think that'll be a pretty easy process at that point. I know we have a lot of great consultants that are out there that I think would like to get involved in this project and start working ahead. We know we have money. We have the Delaware County grant that we received in the amount of $100,000, plus we have the township's match that will go in at that. So there's a lot of great money that's been allocated. We know the money that we have in terms of the match was money that our Parks and Recreation Board requested for earmark out of the Park Impact Fund. So we know that that is available to definitely get us well underway into developing a concept plan, as well as hopefully a design and engineering plan for what the park might look like. So I'll be really excited to get that process started here as we move along midway through the year. And then also continue to, as it evolves, look at additional funding methods for how we might go about funding this project. So, that we know that could be through a variety of different ways. That could be grants, capital money that potentially gets allocated in next year's parks capital budget, as well as potential bond monies and what have you that might exist out there. So it's definitely on an exciting path. I think we've had a lot of great conversations with the community, and we'll continue to engage them as time goes on here throughout the next few months.
Great. Moving right along. Anybody on board have any questions or comments?
I just had one question, Tammy. Was there ever talk of improving connectivity to the park, to the trail? I realize as you get from the pizza location over to make it a little easier for people, pedestrians, to get across. Has that been part of that conversation?
It actually has. So I know we have a group of residents that are very interested in the connectivity that doesn't necessarily include the park proper. But we definitely want to work to set the park up as well so that it has a way of circumnavigating. I know that's something that we've heard a lot about in a lot of our conversations. And we have a group of residents who are interested in not only getting from the trail to Highland, but Highland Avenue improvements as well, because we know we have visibility concerns and issues as you come up or come down Highland in both directions, obviously from Maplewood or from, West Wayne Avenue. But we also have at Fairview and Church difficulty in visibility. There's no sidewalks, accessibility. So we would be looking for a continuous loop and route so that we can improve that. But it would be separate from this park. But there's definitely two different groups of interest that are working out there for improvements.
I just think of young riders in particular and families. It's always that getting across the roads and safely. It's just always, we're dismounting and crossing, and for the youngest people, it's the hardest thing. So
it's definitely something that we're going to be taking a look at as part of this. It wouldn't be necessarily funded out of this project. Right. It would probably come out of a different, source, like township sourcing of funds, given, it includes like sidewalks and accessibility and routes.
Even going to Beau Connor when you're, playing baseball or you're going to soccer fields, a lot of people are riding their bikes. So just you like right off the trail and go over without having to worry about, somebody rushing to go somewhere and have a terrible mishap. So any connection to the trail to those parks, it just links all your diamonds together, basically,
Absolutely. And we have a township comprehensive plan that's underway too, which is taking a very close look at that, not only in the Odoriceo neighborhood, but in a variety of other locations throughout Radnor Township, and also tying in our greenways and trail plan that we have that was done probably going on 10 years now, but working on the goal, putting together the goals and objectives of that plan that includes a lot of that connectivity.
Anything else? Okay. Next up, Enke Park Ball Field B, lighting proposal.
On February 13th, the project was authorized by the Board of Commissioners, and it will be slated to get underway here, I believe, sometime in mid to late April, early May. So as soon as we have a more defined timeline on that, I'll be sure to report back to the board so that you all are aware. So the township's working closely right now for them through the permitting process, and I know the lights, I believe, are on order.
Great. Anything on that?
Great job on that, Tammy.
Yeah, that's what was pretty smooth.
Well, thank you for your leadership on that
Yeah.
as well, and of course to the commissioners.
Okay, 2023 Radnor Township Capital Budget, Parks and Facilities and Park Impact Fund Project.
So the update that I have here really is relative to our allocation of the major project that we had out of that fund last year, which was the Enke Park addition of the sunshades, as well as the roofing structures that are going to go on the different pieces of equipment, as well as the replacement of the surfacing. So I don't know if you noticed when you came in, they might have had the site cleaned up, but they did start on it this week. They actually started on Monday, so the project is well underway. Hopefully the weather holds out on us, and with a little bit of luck, we can get through that quickly. It will be weather dependent, of course, especially once it comes time to putting the poured-in-place surface together, because the conditions do have to be right. So the playground will be closed for a while. I can't say exactly when it will reopen. Again, I don't want to predict the weather. Starting to see temperatures next week again, I think dipping down into the 20s again. So, and lots of rain, I think, was in the forecast. So we're going to be watching it along the way, and hopefully they get in. And obviously they've made a lot of headway to date. I know they had ripped out all the surfacing already. They have that removed. They're already getting ready to pour the footers for the sunshades. So it's very exciting to see the project come to fruition.
Tammy, do you have a wish for estimate on when this will be completed?
I always have wishes.
Yeah, well, I'm asking you to tell us about
They
your
never,
wishes, Tammy.
They never go as planned. I mean, if I had to give a ballpark, I would say, hopefully by mid-May at the latest.
All right,
I mean,
that'd be great.
it could be a lot faster than that,
That'd be great.
as long as the weather is good.
Okay, no, that sounds great. Anything on, anything on the Park Impact Fund project, the Yankee project? No, we're good? Okay. Willows Park Preserve and concerns about dogs in the Willows Park and on the Skunk Hollow Trail. Do you want to lead us off on that, Tammy, on your thoughts?
I know we've been having a discussion for several months now about having a discussion. So what I will say is that in April, we know we want to welcome folks out to the meeting and have a focused discussion, specifically on the Willows Park and Skunk Hollow. In regards to the Willows Park, you know, we know right now we have a policy of no dogs, so we want to continue to enforce that. But where we know we've had some concerns, and especially some safety issues that have been brought to our attention over the last couple years, is relative to the Skunk Hollow trails. We know we heard a couple years ago from the Willows Park Preserve, and I know, Mary, you made a great presentation that talked about some of the inconsistencies throughout the code, as well as some of the safety issues I know that have been witnessed there on the trails. We get a lot of anecdotal feedback. We see a lot of incident reports. We know there's a lot of folks that are passionate about their dogs being in the parks, off-leash, being on the trail, off-leash. But we also know that there's a large contingency of people that don't use the trails, a lot of them being young people within our community that don't go there because of the dogs. They're just being fearful of the dogs because they're just either not under control, or they're far away from their owners, and have definitely significant concerns for that. So knowing that, we have all this feedback, and there's a lot of strong emotions, something that we definitely want to take an opportunity, and we want to talk to people about it in the interest of safety. That's really the critical piece. And I will say, over the years, there's different things we get lots of feedback on. People call, or police see incident reports. They're definitely Skunk Hollow, I will say, has definitely been the largest over the last several years. So we've definitely seen an increase in attention that's needed there. So I want to recognize that. I know we as a board have been talking about recognizing that. I don't know where the conversations are going to take us, but I think it's really important that we get them started and start to hear from people, and start to get some direction on where we think we might want to go with either a change in policy or a change in the ordinance. We do know that the shade tree, we do know that the health board is currently looking at the issue of dogs at large on leashes throughout the park, throughout the township, relative to the ordinances, of course, that have been enacted relative to the code. And even though their conversations aren't, I don't believe, specifically happening relative to parks, there's a synergy between the two. So we also want to definitely stay in unison with what they're discussing, so that both boards are on the same page, as there could potentially be changes to the code that may occur going forward, or changes to policies. We know we've talked a lot about future and enforcement and things like that. We know that's an important part of this, but overall, again, it comes back to the safety, and it comes back to quality of life. We have a great trail system at the Willows and Skunk Hollow. Arguably, that's the nature respite of the township. And if our young people can't go there and have a pleasurable experience, we definitely have an issue I think we have to address. I mean, as you heard earlier, we have a great program that we're going to be having over there at that park. It's something that, it's a great park. We want our young people to feel safe in it. But definitely when we deliver programs like that, and like we do the scavenger hunt during Halloween, we hear from people, and, we want to make sure that they're safe and they have a good time, because they're our young stewards of the park, and we want to keep them coming back. So in April, we want to have that focus meeting. I know we're going to put out some information in our newsletter. We'll get some information out on the website. So just as we have done to have some open-ended discussion on Odorriceo and Fenimore over the last couple years, that'll be a meeting to start to address specifically Skunk Hollow and the Willows.
I think it's time for us to do something about it. I think as someone who's on that trail in Skunk Hollow a lot, I noticed in particular during the pandemic, and this is true with every park, that the usage went way up, but the usage for dog walking really went up. So in a way, the park's a victim of its own success. It's a beautiful park. It's wonderful. Everybody has a good time on it. But we want to make sure it's not dominated by one sort of use versus others. We want to make sure it's accessible and open and enjoyable to as broad a constituency as possible. So when we have this meeting in April, I hope we have, I'm sure we will, have a broad range of opinions and thoughts and ideas and perspectives on this. We want to hear all of them, the full range of opinions. So I hope that people will turn out and participate. And also, it would be great to get some good ideas on how to deal with the problem. There might be some creative solutions that even we haven't thought of. We have looked at what other townships have done pretty uniformly. They've had dogs on leashes in parks, but there is some creative thinking out there in some of the townships. So anyway, hopefully that'll be a productive meeting in April. We'll get us on a good path, so to speak.
Definitely. And if we need to focus our meetings later on a particular objective that we may be heading into, we can certainly put those statements out and that detail out later as the focus maybe starts to narrow. So I think just as we head into April, we'll keep it, more high level, as you're saying, and discussion based at that point, because I think the goal is to hear from everybody.
Yeah.
And we know to date, we've also received a lot of feedback. We have a lot of emails that have come to myself and to the board that have been shared and discussed. So it'll be good to hear from everyone. And then I know we have folks in other parts of the township that have interests in dogs as well. We've heard from residents in the Clem-McCrone neighborhood that would like to have dogs. We've had some that said they don't want to have dogs. So, it's not like a one-size-fits-all
Yeah.
problem, but it definitely is an issue with some recurring themes. At Hartford, we have folks that have some issues there as well, but I think over there it's more of maybe an infrastructure situation that needs to be addressed in terms of fencing and separation, similar to what we have over at Friends of Radnor Trails Park to create sort of those boundaries and barriers. So that's something I think is, again, there's a different issue at Hartford. We have a group in the Cowan neighborhood, I believe, that's petitioning to have dogs in the park. Cowan's a very small park, lots of active recreation. Those two uses, may be incongruent to one another. So there's a lot of discussions, and I think we've got to start just tackling them one by one. So I think let's stay focused on sort of where the most impact we know has been, which is Skunk Hollow, and go from there.
Has there been any focus on a fenced dog park at any of the parks? Has there been any drive for at least one?
There is two things. At Friends of Radnor Trails Park, it's not fully enclosed. So we have a project over there that actually is going to be getting started in the coming months, maybe 6 months. I know there's a stormwater-based project that our township engineer is working through. So one of the things I asked him before, because I think the fencing is going to be ripped out as part of that, and that park is actually going to be, it's not going to be usable for a period of time. That's on the future horizon. So one of the things I've asked him for us to be able to take a look at there is an enclosure, potentially. So that'll be something that we'll be looking at. Doesn't mean we're going to do it, but it's something that we want to look at and, obviously have some conversations with the neighbors, the commissioner, et cetera, to try to figure that out. We also, we would like to do that at Hartford as well. Look, I know we've had requests over the years to have a separate area for smaller dogs versus, the larger area. So I know we've had some money in the capital budget for a few years just to allocate towards fencing, not any designated configuration, but to at least, again, start that conversation and have that look. So there definitely have been, at least for those two parks, that's where we have had those discussions and have had that feedback.
I think it's definitely part of the solution. It also gives safety for those dog owners that have smaller dogs, because the interaction between the big dogs and the little dogs is where I've seen some of the worst activity at the Willows. So giving people options for their dogs and their safety is important too. So.
Yeah, and they seem to be pretty popular. I mean, I'm aware, there's one down in Haverford, Lower Merion has one, and they seem to work really well. There's one down at Schuylkill Park down in Center City that I spent a lot of time in lately, and it does seem to work well to have the big guys and little guys separated. So
It becomes a social space too. There's families that have dogs and they hang together, so I
Yeah.
think it adds to
yeah,
the.
I mean, it seems to work. The
adds to
dogs are having a great time. So
Yeah.
Anyway.
Some
Anything-
dogs also can't, like if you're at Hartford, some dogs can't be off leash in the mass area, but if you have an enclosed spot,
Yeah.
your dogs, obviously, you're able to get them safely.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
Tammy,
Claire.
do you feel that, or would you say that the feedback that you've received over the last year or so has been on an uptick for more incidents, do you feel like the Willows is the place where we're hearing more of incidents?
The Skunk Hollow Trails particularly.
That's what I meant. Skunk Hollow.
And I mean, some of it is, it's the uptick, it's the anecdotal uptick. We don't have measurable data to say it's overused. I think we all just have observed it's overused from those of us who use it. We also have had more programming over there. So our staff is on site a lot, engaging with people. So we hear from a lot of folks. There's been a lot of emails, but by the same token, we've also been soliciting from soliciting them for the last year and a half as well, too. So I think it's been a myriad of reasons for that, but there has been an increase. And so now the information's out there, now the feedback's out there, we have a sense of responsibility to talk about it and address it.
Like you said, the foot traffic there is increasing exponentially. I was hiking last weekend, and it was just the amount of people there were more than I've seen in a long time. And even with dogs, it was an enormous amount of people on the back trails particularly.
Now, I think one of the areas where you could see that traffic is when you enter the trail from the Willows parking lot. I was on site a couple weeks ago with Steve Ledgerton, our park supervisor, and the area was like a mudslide as you walk up to where the trailhead is. So one of the things he and I were taking a look at is maybe, kind of creating a little bit of a wood chip entrance to get up there so that that area that is completely mud can be seeded and topsoiled so it can grow back. So we are taking a look at that. I did drive by it today. It looked a lot better. So maybe I just caught it on a really bad day after it rained, or we were there a day maybe after there was a lot of rain. But it seems like you can tell that there's more of an impact to the areas because there's so many more people using the areas.
That foot trail going up there is really worn down. And when it's muddy in the winter, it's a full season park. So people are after a rainy day, it's pretty mucky. So.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Anybody? Thank you, Tammy. Next up is the Parks and Rec Board member Park Steward Program. Does anybody have any issues to report with the parks that they have taken under their wing to steward?
If I may, before we get started, I did circulate an updated list with the openings. You should have received a color copy of it, so you would actually see the highlighted areas for the respective parks that are currently open. So just overall, as a little bit of a recap of the goals of the program, was really to have each Park and Rec Board member assigned 2 to 3 parks, but now that we're down to, we've lost our 2 school board representatives, so we're down to 5 people. So obviously there's going to be a greater division of parks because we have a lot of parks. So I want to take an opportunity to evaluate maybe filling in some of those gaps or reallocating, some of the parks that folks maybe want to take on. And then just overall, encouraging folks, and especially Clark being new on the board, get out, see your park each month, take a look, see what's going on, visit it, look at what's going on in it, things like that, and report back. And ideally, we like to hear those things in advance. Like if you see something, give us an email, because we can address it right away. And a lot of times, these are things that are on our list already that Steve's already working on, with his staff. It just might be something they haven't gotten to. But it also could be a situation that just occurred and they're not aware of it, just since they're not in all the locations at once. And then give us feedback relative to what you would envision in terms of major maintenance projects, major planning projects, ideas, thoughts, anything outside the box. As we know, right now is like the perfect time to kind of go through this exercise because everybody's getting outside. They have all summer to sort of really, permeate the parks, get out there, see what's going on. And then that ties in with our capital planning for next year. We'll take a look at the capital budget. We'll come up with the, idea of how we're going to, move forward through that. Obviously, funding is always an issue, but, start to make sure, we're identifying the projects appropriately that are allocated in the budget and then start to prioritize, what we think might want to be done for next year if there is money that becomes available. Obviously, we know we're working on projects like Fenimore and Odoricio. Those are underway. But looking more comprehensively, we know some of our playgrounds at some of the parks, are aging. We know there's some other areas that need some improvements. By the same token, we've made some great improvements over the years, so we have a lot of great things to celebrate too. But essentially, that's how that works. And then I wanted to highlight real quick to Radnor Activity Center. For whoever may be taking that on in the future, Howard, I know that was your park, or not your park, but your facility that was assigned last year. We are looking at Radnor Activity Center as part of the facilities bond, so that'll be a topic that's going to come under a lot of discussion this year and next year. Sorry to jump in on that. I just want to kind of give that background.
I wanted to bring that up next anyway, so I'm glad you did. I was going to say, well, maybe we could, actually fill in these gaps tonight, but it occurs to me that Christina's not here and Bill's not here and Clark's very new. So what I would like to ask the board is that we look this over between now and our next meeting and decide if you can take on another park or whether you want to switch parks or, whatever you might want to do with this chart. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9 gaps right now. And then we'll try to take care of that, actually get this filled out completely by next meeting. Does that sound doable? I would try to contact Christina and Bill to let them know that that is their homework assignment. Okay, anything else on that, guys? Andy?
Well, I had a question about Hythen Valley, about the bridge there, Tammy. Is there any, I mean, obviously there's one-way entrance and out, so it's obviously still accessible, but has there been any movement on the bridge repair there?
It's under design
Okay.
by Gannett Fleming. Steve is working on that project.
Okay.
I can try and get an update. I know it's been under design for a while, and I think they've been back and forth trying to refine it, and I'm not sure where it is in terms of its completion of design and/or potential bid for construction.
Okay,
I'll get you an update on that, though.
thanks.
Okay. Oh, we're up to public participation. Sarah, got anything for us? Okay, no public participation. I think we may be ready to adjourn. Do I have a motion to that effect? Claire?
Second.
Second, Andy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, nobody opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. That was a productive meeting. I'm going to send myself a message about Bill and Christina.